So you with the platform are back to the Olympic Games in Paris, and this is a difficult interview to do. These are the interviews you never like to do when you're a New Zealand sports broadcaster. Having to interview an Australian sports broadcaster at the Olympic Games while the Australian team is just rolling through these days, picking up medals left, right and centre, and the Kiwis from across the ditch still can't break our duck anyway. One of the more humble Australian broadcasters, Steve Robilliard, familiar voice to, I'm sure, all our television viewers here in New Zealand, is joining me now from Paris, from I imagine, the gymnastic venue where he tends to spend most of his time at the Olympic Games, to just talk a bit about this Australian effort. Another gold medal overnight, or this morning in New Zealand time, in the women's 200 metres freestyle. Molly O'Callaghan taking out the gold. That's the fifth Australian gold medal of these games. You're still 2 gold medals ahead of the American team, Tally. What's the reaction been in Australia? What sort of feedback are you getting from this extraordinary start by the Australian team in Paris?
Oh, Telf, good to talk to you again. I think in the last few days there's been a lot of Australians taking screenshots of the medal table because it won't look like that in 10 days' time. But as you say, it's been a cracking start. And in the pool is where they've had the biggest reward, because Ariarne Titmus won the 400 freestyle and they won a women's relay as well. And early on, Jessica Fox won a canoeing event and Grace Brown cycling time trial. But it's not an unfamiliar pattern, Telf. Australia tends to do well at the start because we're traditionally quite strong in swimming. But that's all right. The other nations will skip past us fairly quickly. China, I just look at the medal table now, they're up to 5 gold as well. And interestingly, Japan leads with 6, and then France, China and Australia. But there were a day and a half ago, Australia was on top of the medal table, and I'll go, oh, what's going on here? But anyway, just settle back. It's not going to stay that way.
What sort of total has Australia got in mind? I mean, we spend a lot of our time before the games here, various so-called experts predicting what sort of gold medal tally and what sort of total medal tally we might win at the games. I presume something similar plays out in Australia. So what's the target?
Oh, these days, Telf, they try not to set one. They hope to do well in certain events, but generally you get your nose knocked if you try and set a total. So, look, I think we can still do well in events like in rowing and sailing. When the track and field starts, we kind of not so well involved. We've got a couple of decent middle distance runners, but our men's hockey team might go okay. But look, I think we've made a better than expected start, and we shouldn't expect the gold medals to come every day. And I wouldn't put a total on it, Telf.
I imagine there's probably some disappointment in the Australian camp today that Ariarne Titmus had to settle for a silver medal after her. Did she win a gold medal? And she did. She won the 400 free, didn't she, yesterday?
Well, that's all right, because an Australian beat her.
Yes, exactly.
So,
yes.
That's gold and silver.
Yeah.
Look, she's got a lot of public affection behind her. She describes herself as just an ordinary girl from Tassie, so from Tasmania. So she says, "I'm not a different person to what I was before this race," and if she can stay grounded like that, then of course she endears herself to the public. But if someone's going to beat her, at least let it be another Australian, and that was the case. But Titmus in the 400 managed to beat Ledecky, who from the United States, who's accumulating an awful lot of Olympic medals. So she's got her own story to tell. So, but no, it's all good, Telf. We'll see if they can pick up some more medals in the pool, and see how we go from there.
And to Paris itself, the city that's hosting the Games, they turned on what I thought was without doubt the finest and most exhilarating and electrifying opening ceremony I've ever seen at an Olympic Games, and I can't imagine any country in the near future is going to top that. Then they've had their sort of difficulties and embarrassments, the sabotaging of the railway tracks and 800,000 people disadvantaged as a result. And also this, I think, acute embarrassment around the fact that they may have to cancel the swim leg of the triathlon, which is the men's triathlon tomorrow, as a result of, I guess, the levels of pollution in the Seine River. How's that going down in France?
Well, it's funny if you have to turn a triathlon into a biathlon. Look, it's happened before. As the games were nearing an opening, they said, look, the Seine River is fine. The mayor jumped in the river and she had a swim to try and prove the point. Look, that won't be going down well if that's what happens. Uh, as far as the rest of it goes, there are 40,000, 45,000 security people on the ground trying to keep a big city safe, and that's difficult in Europe. With regard to the sabotaging of these important rail lines in regional France, the news networks are just gutted by this because look, this isn't us, and this has affected a whole lot of people who weren't even going to the games or from the games. They're just on their summer holidays. Families have had their holiday plans, thrown out the window, and it's a really debilitating piece of terrorism, if you like, and it's not even clear who's done it and why, but it takes a bit of fixing. So that's a kick in the guts for a democracy. You can't stop people doing those kinds of things in an open democracy, and unfortunately, sometimes that happens. But they don't like it. They're very upset that it's happened.
Mm. Okay, let's turn to some things that you've been watching. You have just witnessed, you're telling me before we came on air, one of the truly great gymnastics team finals that played out the men's team's finals, and very dramatic finish with Japan, China and the United States tussling for the medals. And in the end, it was Japan, was it, that came through?
They did. And Telf, I've done a few of these. And as far as team finals go, and the gymnasts hold this medal, the team medal, in the highest regard because you need the group to perform together and to get the result. Now, China were the top qualifiers for the team medal. It was thought that they would win it quite easily. And at the halfway stage, they were on track to do that. But Japan just wouldn't go away. They kept putting in good routines, and it all came down to the last apparatus, which is the horizontal or the high bar, and it's a very dramatic apparatus to finish on, and they do that deliberately. And both China and Japan were on the same apparatus for the last few routines, and lo and behold, China let it slip through their fingers as they did the bar. One guy fell twice, and it opened the door for Japan, and they crashed through. They were gone at the halfway point, but they just wouldn't go away. They kind of it's unkind to say that it was China's to lose. They lost because Japan just kept the pressure on, and they forced a mistake or two out of China and flipped the result. So they've now won their 8th team gold medal in Olympic history, which is more than any other country. And China were after their 4th, but it was cracking entertainment, and the crowd inside the Bercy Arena were going nuts for it. France weren't even in it, so they were just totally absorbed by the story. And this is why we work in sport, If you don't know what's going to happen, and it was such a great story. The story was more important than the result, really.
And the United States men finished 3rd, so it confirms, I guess, what we've come to witness in recent years, that the power in men's gymnastics is very much in Asia these days, as opposed to maybe Eastern Europe or America.
That's right, and the Japanese came in as the reigning world champions. China and Japan finished 3rd and 2nd in Tokyo. And if you can remember the athletes representing the Russian Olympic Committee, they were the gold medalists in Tokyo, and they're nowhere to be seen here. So that they've not got a representation in artistic gymnastics. We'll see 1 or 2 independent athletes from that region in trampoline, but it's a new ball game. But you're quite right. It was a good performance from the United States, though, to come up to 3rd. They were 5th qualifier, but Japan and China, it was always about them. It was just who, and it was always a heck of a story finding out who it was going to be.